Hello everyone, my name is Sarah. I am a pre-nursing student documenting my journey through nursing school. Some of you know, I took the ATI TEAS back in October of 2021, and since then I have made some study videos, so if you want to watch them, like how to review and stuff for the science and math sections, I have a playlist linked down below for you. First, before I get into the video, I want to say thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I'm so happy that our channel is growing and we have our own little community uplifting people, and it's just so nice. So I'm thankful for each and every one of you. So thank you so much for that. So today I'm going to be going over 7 of my most frequently asked questions about the ATI TEAS, ranging from what the new ATI TEAS 7 is going to be like, to what books I used to study, how I studied, all that good stuff. If you see me looking over to the side, I have my laptop with the questions on it, and I did some bullet points to make sure I included in my answers. So that's what I'm looking at if you see me looking down. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So first question, how did I study for the TEAS? So I gave myself 5 weeks to study, and my overall strategy for each section was pretty much the same. I would read through my study books, make sure I understand the topics being discussed. I would sometimes take notes depending on what subject it was. Like for science, I took notes. I took some for reading as well. And then I would, once I felt confident in, that I knew the content of the section, I would take a practice test. And then I would use the questions that I got wrong to figure out the overarching topic that I didn't fully understand. And I would review that, take another practice test to see if I improved at all. And then I basically go back and forth between studying, practice test, until my practice test was in the score range that I wanted. For me, my benchmark was 90%. So, if I got 90% of the questions right, then I was fine. However, I did understand that, the practice tests that I took weren't a direct indication of the exact score I was going to get. So I was fine getting a 90, because I knew if I got below that, it's not like I would score much lower than what I was consistently scoring in practice tests. So 90 was my benchmark. For reading, I first tried to figure out what the purpose of the passage was when I read through it. So whether the passage was to inform, persuade, entertain. Basically the way that I learned it was if I'm able to distinguish facts from opinions, so I guess that's a first skill you have to learn. If I'm able to detect the difference between a fact and an opinion, I can pretty much tell what the passage is based off of the presence of opinions or facts. So basically what I mean by that is, if a passage is informative, it's going to have pretty much all facts, no opinions. If a passage is persuasive, it's going to have a mixture of facts and opinions. And then if a passage is meant to entertain, it's going to have descriptions, not necessarily either fact nor opinion. So that was how I learned that. And then from there, I had to learn how to pick out the topic sentence, which I know sounds really easy, but sometimes it's not. The way my brain works, I'm very concrete. So analyzing abstract things, I'm not very good at. So I had to figure out what the topic sentence was. From there, I had to figure out the actual topic, the overall arching idea of what the passage was presenting. And from there, I was able to summarize, and then pick out, the summary was the overarching argument basically, with any supporting details, major ones. And that's pretty much the skills that I built on really heavily when I was studying for reading. For math, I pretty much just reviewed the questions and then just retaught myself anything that I forgot or missed or didn't understand. Math is pretty straightforward for me. I think I spent probably the least amount of time actually studying for that. Science is a lot more in-depth though. I read through my books a lot more in-depth. I focus a lot of my time on studying anatomy and physiology, just reading through the body systems, taking notes, watching study videos, and then taking practice tests, like I said, figure out what I needed to understand better, reviewed more, took more practice tests. That took like 3 weeks for me to study. Out of the 5 weeks, science took 3 of them. And then for English, I spent the least amount of time on English because I didn't really study for English. I wish I had though, but for English, I'm pretty sure I just like skimmed through my I skimmed through my study books and took a practice test. I might have taken like 2 practice tests, and I was like, after that, I was like, I got it. I didn't, but it's fine. So the next question that I get a lot is, do I need to memorize the periodic table for the exam? My short answer is no. I don't think it would be that beneficial to sacrifice valuable time you could be using to learning something else to memorize the periodic table. The reason why I say that is because, at least in my experience, I was given the information that I needed to answer the question. I wasn't forced to rely on exclusively memorization alone. I was given, the element with the atomic number and the mass, and I was just asked to find the amount of protons or neutrons or electrons. So I would understand how to extract information from the periodic table, but I wouldn't necessarily memorize it. If you get a freak question that they ask some obscure element, it's only one question. It's not going to hurt you that much. If you have the time, I would recommend knowing common isotopes for your more like, I guess, prevalent elements like hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, even uranium, calcium, nitrogen. I don't even think nitrogen's or calcium's that important, but yeah, if you had to memorize, I would memorize those elements and just stick to those because those are the ones that are tested the most often. If you wanted to like really go in depth, you can also include sodium, helium, and I would stick to the more like basic elements if you wanted to memorize something, but I don't think it's necessary to do well in the test. But I would though understand how to extract information from the periodic table, meaning if they gave you the mass and the atomic number, how many neutrons would the element have, like things like that. Next question is, I have a few days before my test. Do you have any last minute study tips for me? For that, I say it depends on how last minute your studying is. If you're asking and your test is the next day, I would say make sure you get a lot of rest, drink a lot of water, make sure your brain has the nourishment that it needs to do well on the test, because at that point, there isn't too much you can do that would drastically increase your score. But if your test is a few days out or a week out or so, I would definitely recommend taking a practice test to serve kind of as a, I don't know what to call it, but kind of like give you an idea of any gaps that you might have that you still have the opportunity to fill in. So using the strategy of taking practice tests, reviewing what you got wrong, basically that, because if you take a practice test, you have a list of concrete things that you need to go over instead of, a very broad, very broad range of topics. You have just a few that you can go over if you really feel like you need more studying before your test. Okay, the next question I get a lot is what study books I use. So I used the Mometrics ATI TEAS Study Secrets. I think that's what it's called. I use the second edition though. I find the second edition way more helpful than the first edition, which is what the version that you see on a lot of people's thumbnails is the first edition. I'll show you what the second edition looks like. I'll be right back. Okay, so the second edition looks like this. Like the cover looks like this. It says second edition on the bottom. They might release a third soon, I don't know, but this one has more practice problems in it. So as you're going along and as you're understanding information, you have practice problems. I also have access to the first edition, and especially for the math, this is really helpful to have practice problems like as you go. So I used that. I also used the ATI official study manual for the ATI TEAS 6. I think it was like the 2020 or like 2021 version. I found that pretty helpful for the most part, although I think it's really succinct, so it's not really going to explain things. So if this is your first time being exposed to information, I would not use that book because it's just going to tell you what you need to know, not necessarily like anything else. It's going to like basically like just, it's very dry, that book. It's very like, where metrics is very, it has a lot of complexity to it and it has a lot of information. It goes really in depth, sometimes to the point where, in my opinion, you kind of waste your time with some of it because it's just so much information. So if you have 3 months into your test, go for metrics. If you have the time to study for it, go for it. But for me, 3 weeks was not enough time to memorize and be able to conceptualize and understand every single little thing in that metrics book. Do I think it can be helpful? Absolutely, just because of how in-depth it goes. If you really needed to understand something in depth, like that's your book. But for me, I found it just really like overwhelming when I was studying, and I was like freaking out, like I'm not getting it, I'm not understanding it, like I'm reading it, like I'm able to like, read the information, but I can't retain it for the life of me because I can't actually understand it. Which brings me to my next book that I used. I used also the Smart Edition Academy ATI TEAS 6 Full Study Guide. I found that super helpful when I did not understand what was going on in the metrics book. I would look to that book to break down the information in a super simple way so I can understand it and move on to my studying. I also really loved their online videos that came with the study book. And I think, it's really great for understanding information. Like if you're that person who really just needs to know, just needs to understand instead of just memorize and regurgitate, that is your book, in my opinion. And if you want to get yourself a Smart Edition Academy study guide or online course, I do have a link in the description for you. It is an affiliate link. This video is not sponsored, but I am an affiliate of them. So if you get yourself a study guide or course using that link, I will make a commission. It will be no cost to you, but it will support my channel. So next question is, I just registered for my test. Where do I start? So short answer is I think English section would be great because it's relatively concrete. It's just a set of rules that you need to memorize and understand. It's relatively easy to apply the information to the questions because it's just grammar rules and, things like that. It doesn't have as much content, so you may not feeling as overwhelming. And another pro of starting with the English section is people tend to have this like high study morale, like when they start studying for something, and then, it kind of like tapers down a little bit towards, your test. You're kind of like, I just want to get it done. And at that point, if you save English for last, like I did, you're just like, I just want to get it over with, and you brush over it. And I think the English section in particular is a really great score booster because it's so concrete, and because it doesn't have that much content to it as, compared to the science or math section. They have a lot more concepts to understand. I think that the English section is one of the best ways to increase your score. Had I studied more, my overall score would have been much higher because my English would have been higher. So I would start with the English section. Also though, when you register for your test, I would, obviously if you can help it, give yourself at least 8 weeks to study for the test, and create a study schedule and stick to it. And when I say study schedule, I don't mean something as vague as I'm going to study Monday to Thursday and Friday. I'm talking, my study schedule, for example, might have looked like on Monday from 3 to 6 p.m. after work, I'm going to read through chapters, 4 to 8 or 4 to 10 in my ATI TEAS study manual, and I will take a reading practice test. Something like very, very, very concrete. So you are able to stay motivated, you don't feel like you're just studying aimlessly, and you are able to track your progress over time. Next question is, where do you get your practice tests from? The practice tests that I used came from the study books that I used. So the Mometrics book came with 3 practice tests, 2 in the book and 1 online. The Smart Edition Academy came with 5 practice tests, and the ATI study manual came with one full practice test in the back of the book, and then I kind of count it like a bonus practice test because they gave you basically a quiz, a very long quiz, almost the same length as a practice test, but like just a few questions short. But you can honestly, like, I would treat it like a practice test. They gave you a practice quiz for each section, so like unofficially 2, but like if we're being technical, 1 full practice test from that. And then I also purchased 2 practice tests from the ATI website. I took the ATI practice tests, like the ones that I bought online, the night before my exam, which I don't recommend doing. All it did was freak me out. I think I scored, okay, Form C, just a little bit about this, because I do get questions about this too. I got Form B, like practice test B and practice test C. Practice test C I took first the night before my exam. That freaked me out. I think I might have scored overall like a 60. I was freaking out. I found the science section like impossible, just like a joke. I was literally looking at the questions, like crying, laughing because of like, I'm not kidding, because of how insane the questions were. And I kid you not, I can show you my transcript. Maybe an hour later, I took the second practice test and scored an 80 with almost no studying in between. So when I say that practice test B it resembles more what, in my opinion, your test is going to look like, that's why, because practice test C, if you can do well in practice test C, like you got it. That's what I'm saying. But don't let practice test C scare you into thinking that like you're stupid or you're not going to do well, because I literally took each practice test maybe an hour apart and I scored 20 points higher. So like that should tell you something. But yeah, taking practice tests the night before the test, not a good idea. It freaked me out. I almost withdrew my application from nursing school. I'm glad I didn't, but it's no joke. Next question has to do, or the next 2 questions have to do with the new ATI TEAS 7 that is releasing in June of 2022 this year. So a lot of questions that I get are basically along the lines of what is changing with the new ATI TEAS 7. So for that, I'm going to read directly off my laptop because I got all this information directly from ATI. So I'm going to also link where I got the information below so you can see it for yourself. So ATI is restructuring their exam to more evenly distribute question subcategories. There will be 39 reading questions instead of 47. The reading section will have fewer questions on key ideas and details, fewer questions on craft and structure, and more questions on integration of knowledge and ideas. The new math section will have 34 questions instead of 32, with more questions on measurement and data and less questions on numbers and algebra compared to the ATI TEAS 6. The science section will go from 47 questions to 44 questions. It will essentially slash the amount of anatomy and physiology questions in half, slightly increase the amount of scientific reasoning questions, and divide the life and physical science subcategory into separate biology and chemistry subcategories, with 9 questions dedicated to biology and 8 questions dedicated to chemistry. The English section will expand from 24 questions to 33 questions. There will be more questions in all subcategories of the English section, with the highest concentration on conventions of standard English. The new version of the ATI TEAS will also feature new question formats, featuring multiple choice, which we're very familiar with from ATI TEAS 6, but also we are adding select all that apply, fill in the blank without a word bank or option of choices, ordered response questions. So that's like you have to put in like first was A, then was B, then was C, then was D, or whatever order they're in. And then what ATI calls hotspot items, in which students will be presented with an image and will have to select the correct area of the image as their response. So, with all that said, a follow-up question that I get is, will the new ATI TEAS 7 be more difficult than the ATI TEAS 6? And for that, I say it seems that way, right, based off of the new question formats, although it's difficult to tell right now. I haven't looked at the new ATI TEAS study manual for, the new test being released in June. However, it is available for purchase. So if you are planning on taking that version of the test, You don't have to be completely lost, and you don't need to know, like, you don't need to think like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to study, because you do have study materials available to you. I don't know about the other publishers and their study books if they release new stuff, but I do know that ATI released their new study manual last week on like February 24th or something. So I would take a look at that if you're looking to take the new version of the test that releases in June. So with that said, hopefully I don't have to retake the ATI TEAS test and take the new 7. It does scare me a little bit. So if you're in the same boat as me and you're like a little scared about it, like, I get it. However, I do think that they hopefully wouldn't give us anything that was completely impossible and completely like not doable, you know? And I also think that the nursing schools might adjust their expectations with the new test. So, you know, a lot is unknown right now, but we'll get through it. So I just wanted to say that. And yeah, that is the video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see my face again, subscribe, and I will see you next time.